Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Blank. I'm president of Farmland Preservation, Lower Makefield. And joining me, I'll let everyone go around, starting with George, introduce themselves.
George Hines, Secretary.
Dennis?
Dennis Stedman, Vice Chair.
Sean?
John Carney, member.
And Dan?
Dan Bankowski, Treasurer.
Okay, welcome, everyone. We'll start with the approval of our minutes from the September 20th meeting. I'll turn it over to George.
Okay, I've circulated the meeting minutes from September 20th. They've been updated for our meeting, and they're attached to the meeting agenda. I make a motion, or can I have a motion to approve the minutes as prepared?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Thanks, George. We'll move to the treasurer's report, Dan.
Two items that we want to bring up. So first, there's no additional expenditures since our last meeting. Second item that we wanted to discuss that we're going to move to the November meeting is to revisit our investment strategy with Fidelity. We received Fidelity's comments on our continued investment strategy. The short answer is that they agree to continue with the same strategy, but we want to discuss it as a board to make sure that we continue to agree with our, the answers to the questions that they relied upon to come to that conclusion. So that we're going to have that as an agenda item for the November meeting.
So that's my action. I said that I would make sure it's on the agenda for November 15th.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll move to decision on Worthington easement request. That's at 1491 Heather Ridge Drive. I'm going to offer a blueprint for how we move through this. Like to suggest first that Dan give us a recap of where we are. Then we'll entertain a motion and ask for a second of that motion. I'll make a motion about what we're going to do, and then have the board discussion following that, if there is any. Ask for public comment if there is any there, and then bring it to a vote. How does that sound, everyone?
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
So we are talking about 1491 Heather Ridge Drive, which is our the neighbor with our Heather Ridge property. This is the owner of the property is Chance Worthington of Worthington and Shagan Custom Builders. They had approached us about the idea of putting an easement in place to run water and sewer lines across our property to connect their properties to public water and sewer. At our last meeting in September, they presented to the board. They previously presented a number of months ago with a high level construct, and then last month a more detailed plan. So I think that's where we are today. We've had numerous discussions about this, and including an executive session meeting yesterday evening as well that we discussed.
Anything to add by anyone? Okay, we'll get to discussion. So I'd like to entertain a motion, or Dan, if you want to call for it, entertain a motion. Let me put forward a motion that I jotted down to make it as simple as possible for us. And Dan and I discussed this. The motion I'd like to make is to decline the proposed easement request on Heather Ridge, Worthington Builders. Anybody want to second that? Then we can talk about it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think it might be worth bringing up that this is something that was discussed and many different opinions and truly a lack of consensus among the board. But I don't. That's kind of all I have to add, really.
I would agree, Dan. I think due diligence was done. We discussed it at length, and I think your term of a lack of consensus conclusion is correct.
Clearly, there was pros and cons. I think the overwhelming consideration was the long-term potential, long-term implications of having such easements on perpetually preserved farmland that this board and future boards on into perpetuity need to manage, and this board was not willing to impose some what could be restrictions on the property forever. We're tasked with managing the property in perpetuity, not for the next year or two, or not for the next decade. And I think that, to my way of thinking, was kind of the fundamental issue that kept getting stuck on, if that's fair.
Agreed. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll repeat. Dennis, you want to say something? Okay, so I'll repeat the motion is to decline. The motion on the table is to decline the proposed easement request on Heather Ridge from Worthington Builders. All in favor? Oh, go ahead.
I'd ask for public comment.
Oh, yes, I forgot that. Thank you. John, any public comment? John, you're muted.
No public comment online.
Okay, thank you. All right. So there's the motion to decline. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone's time spent on really digging, no pun intended, digging into this and giving it a thorough test.
Mike, if I could just add one comment. Unlike this board is a nonprofit entity, so this proposal or decision was made by this board as the private entity owning that property. This is different than a decision if one was going before a government entity like a zoning board or a variance or approval, land use approval, where once a decision's made, boom, it's done. This is a live decision-making body that is different than those governmental agencies. So I want to just clarify that it's not the same type of denial that can't be reconsidered as would be the case if it were a government body.
Good reminder. Thank you. Yeah. Very true. All right. If there's no other discussion on that, we took it to a vote, declined the proposed easement, and we'll take it to updates now. The first one we had were two for Dennis on Makefield Brook. I don't know if there's anything to update on the missing fence or the permanent signs that were put in.
Well, the missing fence is still missing. Again, the contractor who did the I-295 expansion, who took that fence down, has not been responsive has not been responsive to the township's contact of them. I continue to follow up, and I'll continue to do so. I expect those wheels move painfully slow. the permanent signs, I have to thank Sean. Sean, you want to comment on the no trespassing signs that you installed, I believe?
Sure. Simple task. Dennis, you and I went out months back and put in less permanent signs at the property in 3 different locations. It looks like it's been working from the naked eye in deterring trespassing, dumping, so on. And so we decided to approve putting in more permanent signs, purchase those, and put them in the ground a couple weeks back, probably about 2 weeks back. They look good. I drive by them often, so I'll keep an eye on them if they needed to be, pounded in, straightened, anything like that. We'll keep an eye on them, but they're reflective. They do a nice job. You can certainly see them easily, and I hope that they continue to deter activity there.
And what spawned that, I think that if we've been through the warm summer weather successfully, then that is a success, because there were signs of apparent, teenage kind of partying on that property in those woods, and I don't expect that's going to be happening, or the demand for that won't be as great in the winter. So far so good. Thanks, Sean.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
thank
my
you,
pleasure.
Sean. Appreciate it. All right, go ahead. Your next, also.
Yeah, I was going to say the next one is the utility box on Clearview. Damaged utility box owned by the company that manages the radio towers adjacent to that property. Again, like the contractor for I-295, those wheels turn slowly. They've been notified. We know that they've received a notice. We haven't seen any activity of repair yet, but it is well marked. I went out there within the last few weeks and re-established orange flags around it, so hopefully no one would fall, walk into that box. There should be no one there anyway, but it's a trip hazard and it's well flagged.
Okay. Last update, sort of on old issues, Bridal Estates for George.
Yeah, the tree's been removed. There were a few other dead diseased trees that were adjacent to it. And Matt Corcoran's group took care of it all. It's all down. I went over and checked it out. It looks good. So that's off the books. We're done.
Great. And I guess we'll be getting an invoice. Oh, well, yeah. Remind us, maybe that's for Sean on the payment to Corcoran, or how's that being handled?
That would have been an invoice to Dan, which I believe we probably got within a day of the job being done, if I had to guess.
Was that a part of regular hours,
That's what
or was that separate?
That was, I believe that was a separate request just for that tree, because if we recall, the farmer had already had a quote from someone else. We brought in Matt to have him look at it and give us a separate quote, and then had decided to go with him to do it. I believe that was kind of separately a separate bill, but as far as I'm aware, Dan, he's all paid up to date. So I'd have to believe that was all taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything outstanding. And I should be able to pull it up here in a moment to be sure.
Yeah, I can do the same. Whenever he sends them, he attaches both you and I. So it looks like
yep,
this is probably it right here.
Bridal Estates. It was a September 29th invoice.
That's right, $829.22 in the amount of $1,175 that was paid. Brush cutting of buffer area on Stackhouse, Farmview 1, Farmview 2, Makefield, Longshore, Legums. It came over at the same time. You're right. Yeah, $929. I'm sorry. The $929 one was for $1,400.
Yeah.
Tree work at Bridal Estates Farm, removed large dead birch tree, chipped all limbs, removed wood, and cleaned up. So 1,400, and that was paid. It was sent to us on 8/29. I'm sure it was paid shortly thereafter.
Yep, it was paid on 10/1.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I
great.
know.
Okay. So then we can move on to new issues, and they're both on Longshore. They're the first one is for Sean and Dennis. There were do not damage our trees signs that were posted, and apparently at least one or more were taken down. Sean, you first brought this to our attention.
Yeah, so I drive that road daily. And when I first joined this board, I remember Dennis going through the reasons why we should have those signs made, installed, where they would go, what they would say. Just a reminder to please don't staple things, pin things to our trees, so on. And I noticed that they're all missing. Like the whole strip of them is gone. They were nice white signs, nice lettering, all gone. I pulled over one day to look for them, no signs of them. As you get all the way down to the last one, which is down near the entrance of Makefield Highland Golf Course, I found one laying on the ground. And the only reason I found it was because it wasn't weed whacked around. So the grass had kind of grown up tall. It was broken. It was hit by what looks to be like a tire of a mower, and it was broken off. I took it and pounded it back into the ground. So there's one there that's significantly shorter than it started out. But as I walked down the row, it's evident that the rest is all mowed perfectly flat. So I think something happened in the mowing of that strip and the removal or missing signs. So, I reached out to Dennis. I know he put work into them, let him know that they were missing. Maybe we wanted to reach out to the township. Maybe they could, ask the mowers if there was a reason that they were removed or what had happened to them, so we could retrieve them. But I know we had permission to put them up. We put them up. They look nice. They're all gone or damaged and missing.
So
Yeah.
those are the trees that are along the bike path that goes from Dolington Road down to Taylor's or down to the entrance to Longshore on the right, across
Correct.
the golf course. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And the genesis of that was during the pandemic. There was some kind of positive, heartfelt, support each other.
Yep.
Rainbow kind of initiative where children were posting some signs and stapling teddy bears and little giraffes and bunnies and all kinds of stuffed animals to those trees. And kind of post the pandemic, it really was a mess. I spent a fair amount of time pulling out countless number of staples because everything was put in with a dozen staples, because that is very harmful to a living tree. It's not a telephone pole, it's a living tree, and those wounds are ports of entry for insects and disease. So after removing all those, we thought, rather than have yard sale signs or garage sale signs or something like that reinstalled on those trees, we had put up the Respect Our Trees sign. I'm sure that was not convenient for the people cutting the grass. That it was one more thing to go around. I talked about it with the township at the time to say, is there a best location to put them so that it make it as convenient as possible. Of course, we had a different township manager at that time. I don't know if we have a new one yet, but I know he left in July, and I think some of this happened right after that. At the time, they said put them right in the middle of the trees so that there's adequate room for a mower to go around them without having to back up or get off. But I can take the assignment to contact the township and explore what could or should be done. We got the signs from, I forget the name right now, but from the same sign company that the township uses for everything. And so I know they have that file electronically and could reproduce that image and those signs relatively quickly. I do believe that the posts that they were mounted on were too lightweight. They were not as hardy as they could or should have been. We were kind of experimenting at the time, so I would be in favor of putting them back up as long as it's all right with the Township Public Works Department, unless they find that it's too much of a nuisance for them. We don't want to impose upon them. They are generous and keeping that lawn cut on our behalf. So I'll reach out to the township, and I thank Sean for kind of pointing that out. But if everyone agrees, I'll reach out to the township, see if they have a new manager. If they do, how to best approach this and make it so it's not inconvenient or time consuming for the cutting of the grass.
So my question, Dennis, is before the pandemic, before people put all those things up, because I saw them because I walked down there, so I saw that. But prior to that, did we have any issues that were a concern that would have prompted us to put the signs up in the first place?
I think over the year, I mean, I've seen a few things posted on nothing like that. Nothing like that. I mean, there once in a while there'd be, a little sign posted or stapled onto a tree or something, but nothing in mass like that was. And it was unique. And
Okay.
maybe we feel it's not worth, the reminder.
I filled
I'm open.
I filled 2 giant garbage bags. Oops, am I muted? No.
You're on.
No, you're on. You're on.
Yeah, 2 huge construction garbage bags full of these teddy bears and things with creatures crawling through them from the tree. So yeah, it was unusual. It was multiple staples and multiple stuffed animals per tree.
So my thinking, Dennis, is maybe that if it's not a huge problem, we could put them back, but maybe we don't have to put as many back and you space them out a little bit more. So there's fewer and less issues with the township cutting the grass.
Yeah, there were 3 along Woodside, and then only one on as you turn the corner on Dolington. The other approach, which I would be in favor of, is let's leave them down and see if we have an issue. If we're not having any issues with people posting on those trees, maybe they're not needed at all. We can certainly take a wait and see attitude towards it too. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that.
Okay.
And then when in follow-up, it might be just for the future useful to talk to Public Works. May not have to go through the township manager because they're the ones, right, who cut that grass and just.
Well, I meant the manager, the director of Public Works.
Yeah.
I was referring. Yeah.
Because they may have suggestions about it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm fine with that. If the board is to, let's wait and see if they're needed.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep, I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without dissent. Yeah, that sounds
Right.
good, Dennis.
Okay.
And the next item was for myself and Sean with Mr. Jeff Herco, who has the property sort of right in the middle of Longshore. We had said we would follow up and demarcate and see where the line was, our property line, because we didn't want a fence built in there. Just to remind Jeff of where his stuff is relative to our property. We haven't done.
Mike, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
No, I'm not sure. I guess if it'll even work, to be honest with you.
Share screen.
Yeah, I hit it, but I'm on an iPad, and I'm just wondering if the multifunction it just isn't taking. It's no big deal.
Okay. Sean, any comments?
Yeah, I just thought that the way that we ended it was that we we decided not to allow for permission back in our area, similar to how we wouldn't allow, I think there was a case brought up like why we wouldn't allow a shed in our buffer area type of instance. I just think that in order to kind of close the loop, that what we talked about was going back there and defining the line. We had determined that a fence was not necessary, but that perhaps posting just with posts would be, or something to that degree. And I think that we should follow through with that and do it. I don't think right now is the right time. I know there's hunting that takes place back there. So we're not looking to disturb anyone. But at the end of the day, when we were taken back there, shown the property, it was evident that there were already things on our property that day. And we had asked for them to be removed. We just assumed that, good neighbor, they will be removed. But it was part of our plan to go back there and either have it staked or define where the line was. And I just think that we should, follow through with that. Again, maybe right now is not the time. In hindsight, while we had the surveyor out right across the street, which would have been the perfect time to just have them walk across the street and shoot a line for us. Doesn't have to be real long, but just so that we had a defined line back there where there's obvious use going on.
Mhm.
When would be the right time, do you think, Sean, as far as not getting in the way of the hunters or getting ourselves in the way of the hunters?
Yeah, let me look at. I'm not incredibly familiar with the hunting schedule here. With red tag being over, I can now find right on the PA Game Commission website when the seasons are. But let me just take a look at when archery season is and when it ends. And
Archery season has already started.
oh, sure, no, it has. Let me
Yeah.
see when it ends.
Well, the
Yeah,
opening day of deer season is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and this weekend, or this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is the senior statewide antlerless junior.
But those
program.
are rifle seasons.
No,
And
it's
we're only
shotgun
talking. Yeah, well, right, shotgun
shotgun
and
or
rifle.
archery, I believe.
Right. Archery is, I know the archery season to be going on right now, period. And it'll run through into December. So I'll check the dates, Mike, and we'll figure out when they're not back there. Go back and just, do it. But again, next time we have a surveyor, let's just make a footnote that this would be a line that we'd like shot.
Yeah.
I mean, just 4 clear corner posts, I'm sure would be productive, right? Just
Yes,
a good
that's
metal corner post that with some fluorescent orange on it, anybody can kind of beat
That's right.
and know where they are.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's a January archery season. I think by the time you get to February or March, we'll be
We're in the
wide
clear.
open.
Yeah, I would say in February we're clear. I do know I have the contact of a couple of people that hunt back there. I can easily contact them and ask them to just let us know when they're done.
Yeah. Okay.
And you haven't seen, just a little bit of a tangent here, but Sean, you haven't seen activity as you pass by, like there were hunters that Jeff had on his property last year.
Yeah, I mean, we know there's hunting back there. We know there's people back there. I mean, there's definitely things that go on in those woods back there. I think once we kind of have our defined line there, like we said we were going to put in, I think we'd be at less risk then.
Mm-hmm.
Which was one of the reasons that we denied the request, was just, kind of the risk of going onto our property, allowing just to go onto our property to do work.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, other business. I know, Dennis, you wanted to talk about red tag deer program.
Yeah, just to give a report, the red tag program. It's an agricultural deer control program that is makes some allows for some out of season hunting of antlerless deer on agricultural parcels that are suffering economic damage from deer. That program ended at the end of September. We've participated in that program on 4 properties at Longshore, Makefield Brook, Clearview, and Leadham are the 4 where I apply for red tags for those properties. This, if anybody's interested, is what a red tag looks like. It's a very stiff, heavy tag that I have. I at the end, I am responsible to give these to approved hunters and to get them back. Any red tag that isn't used has to be returned to the Game Commission. I just got the last one back, which is why it's in my pocket. So now I can send them in. We had 23 red tags this season. Only 5 were utilized. There were 5 harvests. So I'm returning the other 18. I also received here just a week or so ago a very large packet of information from the Game Commission, 4 times, one for each property, on how the red tag program is changing next year. And I haven't had the opportunity to really go through that in detail, but it looks complicated. It may be a hassle. I don't know. I'm going to find out. They're going to break the red tag into 2 seasons, kind of January to May, and then June to September. Yeah, I have to look at it. But if it's too complicated or too much of a hassle, I'm going to question whether we want to continue to participate in it. It did result in the harvest of 5 antlerless deer, presumably all of which were female, which helps the deer population, but it's also a drop in the bucket. It's not for the lack of deer being there. That's a lousy time of year to be hunting, and it's hard to get the deer in close for archery because this is only archery. There's no long rifle. So just we had 23 this year. We used 5. I'm sending them back to the Game Commission, and I have to reevaluate our application, which will be due beginning of January, after I look over the new regs and determine if, I'll come back to the board and let you know whether I think it's much more difficult or not. Maybe it's simple. It doesn't look that way, but it's also a document created by a state agency, so they're paid to make them look complicated.
So Dennis, is there anything you can glean from the 5 tags that were utilized on who used them in relationship to our farmers? Anything of that sort? All
4 of these properties are Sam and Tim Stewart's properties. I would say the only correlation I have is those hunters who go out frequently are the ones who use the tags.
Okay.
If they're going out every so often when they get a chance, every 3 weeks or something, that those tags come back. So the focused, dedicated hunters are the ones that are using it. And by the way, the deer are processed. In most cases, they are consumed by the hunter. I know there are programs for charitable donations at Ely's Processing and the other processor that in the area, and so some of the deer go to a donation for food kitchens through a USDA registered site. So
Dennis, Bob Colavita hands out his own, correct?
Say that again.
Bob Colavita hands out his own red tags. He applies for and hands out his own, correct?
In the case of Bob Colavita's the property that he leases from us, he manages that himself.
Okay.
I volunteered to manage this on the behalf of Sam Stewart because it really is the farmer who's making the application, not the landowner. But I have an agreement with Sam that if I do the administration work that he's somewhat allergic to, then he will support the activity as well. So we kind of team up on that.
And Tom McGowan or Doug Wright, have they expressed any interest?
No, Tom McGowan is his lack of interest is rather insistent and firm.
Mhm.
And Doug Wright's property really is not huntable property. There's no real cover there. It's all just an open field. So
Mhm.
though that's not really compatible.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Dennis, or Mike, have
Hmm.
we heard from Big Oak Whitetail Management yet this year?
I have received nothing. Dennis?
I didn't know we heard anything that they were involved anymore. The township doesn't use Big Oak Whitetail Management, to my knowledge,
Oh,
for deer control. They used to, and then for economic reasons, they dropped that because it was out of pocket expenditure, and now they count on the organization BOMA,
That's-
That's the
BOWMA.
same organization.
Oh,
Bucks.
I know them as BOMA.
That's
I didn't know they were called Whitetail. BOMA had I had given BOMA 10 tags for the Leadham property. The Leadham property, we allocated to them. They used 3 of the 10.
Hmm.
Last year, they had a better success rate than they did this year.
So 3 of the 5 tags that were utilized were utilized by Bowman members.
Right.
Okay.
They had 10 of the 23.
Yeah. Okay.
And-
And
yeah.
utilized 3. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So usually we get a request round about this time. Dan's right, from BOMA, saying, can we hunt the properties that we've done in the past? And I thought it's been only Leadham's. It's only 1 or 2, maybe Clearview and Leadham's.
I don't think it was Clearview.
Not Clearview. Makefield Brook
Hmm.
Could be
Okay.
Makefield Brook.
and Leadham. Yeah, Makefield Brook and Leadham's.
But what?
I haven't had that request. Certainly.
Hmm.
There's a number of hunters using both of those parcels currently.
Okay.
Well, not I shouldn't say that. Leadham, as far I don't know of any hunters. We haven't given permission to any hunters to use Leadham other than BOMA.
Okay.
Bob Calavita has given permission to hunters to hunt Leadham.
I thought that was just the portion that he rents.
Okay, and it could be. I mean that
Yeah.
the tree
Yeah,
stands are
Leadham is the
up.
largest. Yeah.
Yep, in the border tree line. So
Yeah.
yes, depending on which way you shoot,
Yeah. The
potato,
tree line
potato. But yes,
the tree line that borders Calavita's rented property, absolutely. He controls that, and he's given permission. The woods adjacent to that is what I'm referring to, where the BOMA hunters utilize that space.
okay.
So it's a good reminder, Dan. Should we reach out to BOMA or Dennis? I mean, you're in touch with them. You know who?
Oh yeah, I'm in touch with Jim, the head of it. He dropped off the unused red tags.
Got it.
I'll inquire with him what their intentions are this year.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But okay. All right. So any other business? Sean.
Mike, I have 2 real quick. An update on Susan Circle. So the residents on Susan Circle that we had the survey done, we found that there were a handful of trees that had been planted on our side. We had the fresh survey done, spoke to the residents. They agreed to move the trees. Update would be the trees have been moved onto their property. Once the trees were moved onto their property, I took out the survey stakes, which were 3 to 4 foot metal stakes and wooden stakes with surveyor's tape on them, which are kind of hideous to look at in your yard. So those have been removed. I drove 2-foot rebar stakes into the ground, painted the tops fluorescent orange, and tagged them with surveyor's tape in the ground, and took pictures of the coordinates so that we could easily find them without a problem. And they go down that line. So once I was able to visually see all the trees had been moved, we had agreed to remove those from their sight line. So that's been done. They're happy, we're happy. So that's resolved. The other one would be a request. So I would say in the next 10 to 14 days, Corcoran Landscaping will be doing their fourth and final cut of the buffer areas for the 2022 season. After that's done, if and when you all have the opportunity to walk your farms, especially where we have buffer issues, walk them, because what I'd like to do in the next meeting is have a discussion about prioritizing our 10 winter days. So as you recall, we have 10 winter days contracted with Corcoran. I've also asked him to do the same. So he has kind of taken notes as he's been working on the buffers, and he's already highlighted to me 2 areas that need to be addressed, mainly because getting the equipment in there is difficult. So, some trees, smaller trees need to be taken down, some brush needs to be dealt with, that kind of thing. But what I thought I would do is, if we each walk our buffers after they've been cut, we can comment on them. We can also raise any concerns we have, and then kind of be able to lobby for where we need to put our time this year. I know, Dennis, you had a project last year that did not get addressed because it wasn't high enough on the list, but it is a top priority for this year. It's actually one that, on Makefield Brook, there's about 6 residents back there on that corner that Matt highlighted to me is an area where he's having difficulty with the machinery. And their goal is to be able to use bigger machinery one day than the small mowers they're using right now, where they make 6 to 7 passes, be able to have something where maybe they make 2 or 3. But that was highlighted as an area. There's an area on Stackhouse that was highlighted. But I figured what we could do is, once we have our list, we can then present it to Matt. He can let us know how many days it is. We can prioritize it. I have one area on Leadham's that I wouldn't deem it that it all needs to be done at once. So if it's a 3-day project and we allocate 1 day this year, 1 day the following, 1 day the following, I think it could all get knocked out. We don't have people knocking on our door that it needs to be addressed immediately, but the growth is continuing. So, once we have everything in front of us, I think we can put together a priority list, give it to Matt, and then send him on his way for the 10 winter days to do, kind of at his convenience. So that would be a request.
Sean, question. First of all, great job, and I appreciate the fact that you're calling out that post this 4th mowing, we should all take a look and reassess to help us plan for the winter, and also maybe grade the kind of work that Matt's doing. In setting those priorities for the buffers on these properties, should we also be soliciting the input from Tim Stewart and the other tenants? Are there trees or limbs or areas that are a problem for the farmers? I mean, we tend to get all caught up with our neighbors, which is appropriate, but the farmers growing of the crop, should we get that input as well?
Dennis, it's a good point. There's no harm in doing so. I do think in the last year we've taken care of a lot of branches that have overhung or put shade on the crop area. I can think of a couple that we've done on Stackhouse and on Farmview 2. But there could be areas where they want to have some input. Yes. And obviously we would prioritize that rather high. I mean, I think, if the farmers have areas, we'd obviously prioritize that high. Matt has 2 areas he's identified. We would prioritize those. And then areas where, where either we're receiving incoming calls from either the township or neighbors or emails, we'd prioritize those as high as well. So I'd be all for that. I'd also enjoy some feedback as well. Dennis, I don't know if you want to go have breakfast at Mealy's again, I'd happily do it. That was a great breakfast. But I'd kind of love some feedback on what we embarked on, and see, you know, if they feel as though the value was there that we felt, you know, it would provide.
Right. Okay.
I think that's a really great suggestion, is you do a redo of your breakfast with I mean, because we'd like this to continue. We're happy with it. We hope that Sam and Tim, for the most part, are happy with it.
Right.
Might be a nice idea, just an excuse to go out and have some breakfast.
I'd love to do it.
Yeah, I think, Sean, if you could let us know when that final cutting is done. I know, you know, this time of year, they're very hectic.
Absolutely.
It would
Yeah,
have to
we were
be-
lucky to catch them on a cold, rainy winter morning, and that was perfectly fine.
Exactly.
I was told that the last buffer cutting will be done in October.
Okay.
They'll mow it right down low, and this will be it. So.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it'll probably be in January before anyone heads off to Florida.
Right.
Before Sam heads off to Florida, I'm referring to, and the winter harvest and fall activities are all behind him. So that's a good point.
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
we'll work on that.
Okay.
All right, any other business? All right, well, I can turn it over to John to ask if there's any public comment on anything we've said to date.
No public comment online.
Okay. Well, then the next item is George and action items.
Okay, I have 5 of them. Mike, you're gonna put on the next November meeting agenda, the discussion around the investment strategy.
Right.
Dennis, you're gonna reach out to LMT to talk about those signs for the trees along Woodside, whether they're needed. If we do need them, what's the best way to go about doing it, etc.
I think on that one, I offered to do that, but then I think we ended up saying that let's just wait and see if we have any issues and if they're needed.
Okay, I didn't know whether or not you were gonna still reach out to the township, whoever the supervisor is.
Oh,
or
on
manager.
yes, you're right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then there's still a follow-up needed with Jeff Herco regarding the property line, but we're gonna probably wait until deer season is over before we go wandering back in the woods and verify it.
Yeah.
Dennis, you're gonna assess the new red tag requirements and let us know if we want to continue with that program or if it's too complicated and we should just drop it. And then the last one is really recommendations for winter buffer work. Each of us need to assess our properties after the 4th buffer cutting and bring forward any recommendations for the work in the winter.
And we'd be safe to do that, just clarification, Sean, later this month?
Yeah, I think I'd wait until he kind of goes through with the last cutting, and that'd be the easiest time to assess it. You know, I'm gonna wear orange personally when I go walk it. But yeah, I think it'd be perfectly fine to do it.
Okay.
And then I would just ask that when you bring your request back, like we did last year, and George, for information, what we did was we kind of labeled them red, yellow, green. Like red, this needs to be done this year. We have instances of you know, incoming calls, emails, or it's going to get more expensive if we don't get after this. Yellow, we'd love to do it. It's not urgent. And then green, this is a nice to do, but it doesn't have to be on the top of the list. If we have extra days, we'll tackle it. Otherwise, it'll fall to next year's list. So if we can kind of do something like that again this year, I think it'd be great. And then obviously the farmers' requests would be red. Matt Corcoran's request would likely be red. These are the people with you know, the eyes on it and that are working on it the most often. So we would take that input.
Okay.
George,
That's all I have.
George, I think there was one other action item for me, and that is to check with BOMA on whether they intend to seek permission to hunt our property in archery season this year, which
Okay.
they normally do.
Yeah, Dennis, I was just going through my emails here, and if I am interpreting this correctly, did maybe last year they ended up not doing it officially the same way they did prior years, and we just did it via the red tag. So I'm not, I can't tell though exactly.
Okay. I'll touch base with Jim. It's appropriate to do so anyway this time of year and just get the lowdown. No, not a problem.
Yeah.
I got it added to the list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Well, I think we're done. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Go Phillies, go Flyers, and go
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 Yankees.
Eagles.
Go Yankees.
No Eagles, but there's another one. There's 3 games. It's
Union. Go
Okay.
Union.
Sixers.
Sixers played their first, the Union, but the Sixers play their first game in Boston
Oh my God.
tonight.
Yes.
So for those sports fans, enjoy. I am.
All right,
Thank
guys,
you. Bye.
good to see you.
Good night,
Okay.
you too.
Take care. Thank you.
See ya.